All right, everybody, we know the drill. Without any further ado, let's cue the music and start that word chat.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Peter Sokolowski, our guest today. It's good to see you again. Good to have you back on the show. This is like, I don't know, probably you've been on the show like 7 or 8 times already. Maybe not quite that many. We're always happy to have you for the word of the year, and we did episode 7. If you want to go back and look on that at YouTube, we talked to Peter and Aman Shea. And that was a great hour. And today we're going to talk. We had Stefan Fatsis last month talking about his new book, which is an inside look at Merriam-Webster, and then unbeknownst to anybody, Merriam-Webster has come out with a 12th edition, a new edition of its Collegiate dictionary. So, are you? Today's the launch day, and I understand there's some celebrating going on in Springfield.
Yes, we have cake.
You have cake. It's good. I didn't fully introduce you, so I don't even know, Peter. I don't know what your title is. Is it still editor at large? Is this what we call you?
I don't want a different title. I like
Okay,
I like the title.
That's good. I think at large has this sort of sense of grandiosity that is appropriate. So, but you've been at the dictionary for years now. You started out as the first dictionary of the French English dictionary. Your background's in French. You use that to good. You put that to good use all over the world, as sort of an ambassador for language, as doing spelling bees. Have you been doing that lately? You've been traveling lately?
I just got home a couple days ago from the word panel of the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C., where we choose the words for the next National Spelling Bee. So that was a 3-day meeting. I got home Sunday night. And we do that 3 times a year. We gather 20 of us, including friends of yours. Ben Zimmer is on the word panel. It's maybe the smartest room I'm ever in, and I'm the dumbest guy in that room for sure. But it's a lot of fun, and it shows the care and attention that goes into preparing for the National Spelling Bee.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was a 3-time-a-year thing. I knew this occurred. I was assuming it was just once a year. That's all you really need to talk about
No,
spelling
there are
words.
three meetings of the word panel, all in person, and then there are also, of course, during the year we submit words. They go through kind of vetting. They go through. There's a committee that ranks them. It's actually harder than you think to decide whether one word is more difficult to spell than another at the highest level. And so they're very
Right.
carefully graded so that the words continually get more difficult. But also, we don't want to go to competition with a word that, for example, was the winning word last year. A word that will be a huge advantage for whoever gets it, for that speller. So we try to keep it, it's not fun if it's not fair. And so we just try to make kind of recycle words very, very seldom, but only after maybe a 5-year period, which means that none of these spellers have encountered this word. But then, of course, these spellers get better every year. And so you're finding more exotic words from Tagalog or from Tupi, not just Latin and Greek, of course.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's always a super challenge. Some of these from languages that I think food and plants is
Exactly.
probably the one that I would struggle with the most.
And we've added some things. We've added geographical names. As you might see, there are names of
Yeah,
cities, names of
right.
countries. That was a big step for the B to kind of step into proper nouns because they were accounted for in the Merriam-Webster system, not in the unabridged dictionary, but in the Collegiate dictionary. Although that gets to what we're going to talk about today,
Yeah,
which is the new edition of the Collegiate.
right. Well, let's jump into that. And so what does it mean to have a new edition? Because it's been 20 years. I think a lot of people thought that the 11th edition, with so much moving online, I mean, has had so many updates in terms of printings, but this is a new edition which some people never thought we would see again. So how did this all come about?
Yeah, and that includes me, to be honest.
Yeah,
And of course, far more serious revisions online, that were not just revising and bringing things up to date, but they were in a new style with longer definitions, many more example sentences. In some cases, I don't know if you've seen some of these new etymologies that go 500 or 600 words. These are clearly not written for print. These are written for an
yeah.
online environment. And yet our core business is print. Our heritage is print.
Mhm.
2028 will be the bicentennial of Webster's American Dictionary. And so we're approaching that bicentennial. And, it surprises people. Print is very profitable. We sold 1.5 million books in print last year. We sold 1.5 million books in print the year before that, too. So sometimes people are
Hmm.
surprised that there's still a print business here. And as my boss, as our president, Greg Barlow, has said on NPR, that's not a big chunk of our revenue. I mean, it's less than a tenth or something, but it's still an important part of our revenue. We are still a print publisher, and especially for schools and for paperbacks. And yet, for the professional dictionary, the collegiate dictionary, we'd let that lapse. We'd let that decade, that sort of sacrosanct 10-year period that existed between editions. And the idea always with a revision was to revisit every fact in the dictionary, every date, every hyphen, every capitalization, but also every sense. Is there a new sense to this word? Can we improve this definition? And so that's what we had been doing online, but now it can be informed with this data from online to know not only which words people are looking up in real time, but which words people look up on a daily basis, the most looked up words in the dictionary. The 10,000 most looked up words we gave a huge amount of attention to so that we could know that they're absolutely as up to date as they can be. But, that also tells us the 10,000 least looked up words. And those are maybe entries that we could remove from the collegiate, in this case, to give more space on the page to make it easier to read.
Mhm. So let's go there. What was removed, and what's the saddest removal?
Oh my gosh, I have the spreadsheets. Can I share some screen a little slideshow?
Yeah, we had a question about the cake already in the chat. So
Yeah, we begin with the cake and we'll get to the words, and so we'll answer your question. But let me just slip over to. Oh, hang on. Let me slip over to this. Just a few slides, just to bring a little bit of. There we go. Choose this one, and just let me know if you are seeing the correct thing. I will. Does that look right?
looks right to me.
And actually, it's a photograph of the bookcase behind me. But here's our cake. The cake did have thumb tabs, as you see. And it was made by a bakery across the river in West Springfield, Massachusetts. It's much bigger than a dictionary. It was a nice big cake. Here's the photograph I took. It's a marble cake. Anyway, so we had a catered lunch and a nice little celebration with this cake for dessert. This is the collegiate itself on my desk. I have it here. It is a little bigger, a little heavier than it used to be. We'll just tile quickly through these 5,000 new words. We'll talk about those. A lot more things that we brought from the online environment, including these word lists, word histories, little kind of short articles that you might know from Merriam-Webster Online that are kind of articles for word lovers that allow for browsing. Dictionary was never really a browsing book, but we've tried to turn it into one, as you'll see. And then new terms like farm to table, as you see on this page. But what do you also see? These are professionals. You editors, can you see the difference? There's a lot more space between the lines
Hmm.
in this particular edition, so it's easier to read. And these sort of top 10 lists that we've sprinkled throughout the book. Um, that again allow for browsing, that little serendipity that you get when you're looking a word up in a dictionary. And here's Riz. People love to see the some of the new words. We still retain the etymology and the date of first known use. You see that we put them at the end of these entries. They are not what most people go to entries for, but people like you and me, we know we love that information. And the most looked up words in the dictionary, again, because of our data, we know that a word like paradigm is one of those words that is looked up day in, day out, year in, year out. It's one of those words that send people to the dictionary all the time. So we've marked those with a little magnifying glass. And you'll see that there's some word histories in shaded texts like this that explains a little bit more about the etymology of the word galaxy in this case. And just another example to see the explanation of the word gaslighting. This is one of the words that gets looked up a lot in our dictionary, a fairly new entry, but it's new to print, absolutely brand new to print. Probably there isn't an English language dictionary that has this entry in print until now. And you know, I just took some of the new words just from the letter D, and I noticed how many of them are compound terms, like dash cam and dead name and doom scroll and dumb phone, and just those four words alone kind of they kind of evoke a time and a place. These are not words that we used 25 years ago. In terms like adulting and cancel culture, rando, you know, terms that you might not expect to find in a print dictionary. But here are some of the words that we removed. Again, you'll notice they're overwhelmingly compound terms. I love that internuncial and melodramatize, which is still in with a Z, but no longer with an S. So, like, you know, kind of, you know, we did split hairs. But lobbygow, I forget even what that means, but we know through the data that these are terms that were very, very seldom looked up. They're still online. They're still in the unabridged dictionary, but they're no longer in the collegiate dictionary. Two-suiter is one. Maybe this is the two-suiter might be the only word of these that I've ever heard used myself. It's a term that my father used to use about a suitcase. We also have expanded coverage of African American English, including the habitual be that's very well explained here. And this may also be a first for a major desk dictionary in the English language. And this coverage is extraordinary and detailed, as you see. And editors will love that we still have the proofreader's marks. This is the handwriting of our now retired managing editor, someone I worked with for 25 years. Madeline Novak, and someone who kept the department together and who was the kind of production manager for the 11th Collegiate Dictionary, the last edition. So that's her great handwriting that we have here. And usage. I mean, usage is sort of one of my favorite subjects in dictionary definitions. The usage for the term gender in this case, as you see, it gets into some detail. It's a lengthy note. It's not just a little label. And so there's a lot in here. And so and now I will pop back to to Mark and basically say that was just a little trot through some of the new features. But yeah, we no longer have the need to put so many words. There was kind of an arms race in print for this category of dictionary. That arms race is sort of over. And so what we found is that this is a book that will only be bought by book lovers. So we made a book lover's book. It's heavier. It's bigger. The paper is whiter. It's more opaque. It's linen. There's no jacket. So it's actually kind of a coffee table book. It's pretty. It has the thumb notches, but it's also easier to read. The print is bigger. And there are fewer of those like chemical compounds, a lot of the botanical names that were kind of stuffing the dictionary that is really professional academic language that is easy to find for professionals in those fields. And it's not necessary for a general reader. We know our core audience is the general reader.
So you must have had that sort of different approach to it, because usually when you create a collegiate dictionary, it's for the college student, it's for somebody, it's not the full dictionary, but it's got to give you what you need, and you don't want it to be lacking anything. But now you can say, well, we don't really need that because it can go. Are there net more words or are there net fewer words? Because
There are net fewer. There are net fewer words, and that. But again, that is all in the interest of legibility. I will ask you to open up your copy of the 11th and put it next to this, and you'll see a massive difference in readability.
yeah, and our older, as we get older, we can appreciate the.
Yeah, and I mean, because you are professionals, I'm going to nerd out on typesetting for just like
Yeah,
1 minute
please.
because we had the 11th Collegiate was a peculiar thing. We wanted so much text in that book that we resorted to negative leading. I believe we were the only book in American publishing to use negative leading. Leading or what had been the lead metal spacers between vertical lines of text. The spacer between lines of text had traditionally been the height of a letter in the text. We had leading that was in fact shorter than the height of different letters. So what we did was a variation on Times New Roman with shorter descenders and ascenders. So the P's and the K's were actually squished, and the circles, the ovals for letter P, for example, were widened because your eyes actually register those. They look normal in text, but they look funny isolated. And that was the way we could squeeze more lines onto the page without crashes. If any of you have an old Ninth Collegiate, if you look carefully in the Ninth Collegiate, you'll find a few crashes on the pages. So we had engineered the typesetting to have no crashes in the 11th Collegiate. And then what we did for the 12th is basically let the page breathe. More white space, more space between the lines, a larger typeface, a larger point typeface. And it's all in the interest of readability. The other thing is just the opacity of the paper. Whiter paper. It's a little heavier. It's a little more expensive, but it's a lot more pleasant to look at.
Yeah. How much is the new book? Do you know?
I think it's $30. No, $34.95 is the retail price.
Yeah. And I heard a source tells me that it's sold out on Amazon. So there's discussions in the chat. The source is Ben Zimmer, who would, is pulse on anything lexicographical and word related. But I pulled out my ninth and I looked for crashes of type, but of course I won't be able to find something, but I can barely, I don't know if I get some light, I can sort of make it out. Really, I've got to kind of do this to read it. So yeah, I appreciate that. How many? So if it's sold out on Amazon, do you know how big the run was, or how many do you expect to sell?
I don't know offhand. I don't know how big the run is. It's clearly surprised us a little bit. We have a lot of shipments, and they're coming in shipments of weekly, so that they'll be restocked very soon. But it's been a little bit of a surprise hit. I hope it's a Christmas present for people. I haven't heard any reports of finding it in a store, which it would have been only today. But the thing about this book is the kind of book that, I don't know, it makes me want to pick it up. And I hope maybe a lot of a lot of English teachers and librarians will get it as a Christmas present.
Yeah, I imagine so. I haven't ordered one.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't bothered. Usually a new book comes out, I want to get my hands on it right away, and I like to show it on the show. But I don't know if that would even be possible to get at my local bookstore. But Peter, this is my pride and joy. This is my previous edition, and I got this at auction at Aces, and it's the one you got first. It has the signatures of all the editors who worked on it.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to scan that for me. That's more precious to me now than it ever was, because almost all of the people have retired or moved on, and that was quite a team, And at that time, still some people from Philip Gove's day, who were hired by the editor of Webster's Third. Those were people who had been on staff since before I was born. And when I joined the company, I was working with 7 or 8 people every single day who had been on the staff since the 60s. And one of them, of course, who had been on the staff of Webster's Third, so since the 50s,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
and that's very precious.
And this is 2012.
Yep.
So this is not, and maybe you'd explain this. This is not if you ran out and mistakenly bought a Webster's dictionary, Merriam-Webster dictionary in the spring, it would be quite different from what I have
Yeah.
from 2012. So how does that work?
Well, those are just plate changes. Honestly, they're the smallest kinds of changes, but they sometimes amount to as many as 100 new words or 120 new words or new senses. But plate changes are difficult. You're changing the printing plate. I mean, it's an expensive process, and we don't want to open up every page. We kind of pick and choose very carefully. But the last copyright for the 11th Collegiate, I believe, was 2020. So there has not been a plate change to the book in a few years also. So this is a big, big shift. It's a big shift to the 12th Collegiate.
Hmm. And I have to ask, with this coming out, has there been any talk at all about doing an unabridged?
That it's just too big a project and it's too big an investment and there's no market for it. If we
Well, there
ever
is a market. I buy it, and you probably
Um,
get one free.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, it's imaginable, and we've said this for years that, but also the material that's gone into it is just expanded the length of it. So if Yale University Press wanted to make a 4-volume, printing of all of the revisions made to, in kind of in the style of the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take all of the new material, and it would be more than one volume, it has to be. It could no longer. But if we were to partner with a university press, for example, for libraries and collectors, that might make
Mm.
more sense because that's more of their market. We're really a trade publisher, so we're not equipped to, make a book that nobody, that it is not a mass market title. But we love the unabridged. It's one, it's our heritage. At the same time, the online dictionary is our principal product, very
Right.
obviously today.
And the online dictionary is the unabridged. I mean, there's.
Well, the online dictionary is, well, it's a little bit, it's a little complicated. It's a little complicated. The unabridged is a very long tail of, 500,000 entries. The very much more updated collegiate is sort of the core 120,000 entries of that set. What you will find in the free online dictionary are the unedited, unabridged entries for many, many terms that are not frequently looked up, but are also not very lexically complex. So a word like sesquipedalian, which it has no second meaning. It's very close to its etymology. It's very rootable. In other words, there's almost no information that we can give you about that word that is new. That is relevant. So that kind of entry is static, but it's still useful. Is very, very. I mean, a huge chunk of the English language is like that. But the part that's dynamic about the English language that will keep changing is what you're going to see in this collegiate, and is what the core of our online dictionary is. But if you look up, if the spelling bee is a great example, if one of the spelling bee winning words is a very obscure word, you will find it online in our free website because it includes all the headwords in the unabridged dictionary, even those headwords that are obscure.
Mhm. Okay. So I want to make sure I understand this because I know it's changed.
Yeah, it has
That
changed and it's not easy.
yeah, the best source. So are you saying that there are updated, edited entries in the online unabridged that are not in the free version?
So the answer is no, or I should say, with an asterisk, they would be updated in a different way. So if you
Oh,
take a word that they share, so a word like, one that I'm very proud of, mean, like mean girls, mean, the adjective mean, which is an entry that I revised for the 12th edition. If you take that entry, now obviously that is also an entry in Webster's Third, also in Merriam-Webster's Unabridged. So because they are entries for the same part of speech of the same word, those are two different entries. But if there's an entry in the Unabridged that it has no entry in the Collegiate, then they are the same. So where they overlap, there are different revisions, and the revisions online in the free site will tend to be more recent and more thorough, just because we've been working on it for the last 15 years. But for those words that have not been revised that are also not headwords. Words like we just saw, like two-suiter or timberman,
Mhm.
they will still be online because they're still in the unabridged. I hope that makes it clear. I look at it kind of like a Russian doll, like there's like the more current one is the smaller one, and the longer tail, the older material is surrounding it. I hope that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And I tend to go. I tend to go to different ones. I mean, I love finding differences in the unabridged versus the collegiate, in the pay site. And I don't often go to the free site because I have the others, but it is always fun where, like, I don't know if it's changed now, but the one that I always loved was rock and roll is done two different ways, and one in the collegiate one, and I can't remember which is which. One is hyphens, one doesn't.
Well, and also it's fun. The definition in Webster's third of rock and roll was something like, rhythmic jazz. I mean, and that's the thing. Dictionaries are a measure of language, but they're also a measure of time, right? And they give us a snapshot of that moment. And Webster's third is unbelievably resilient to time. As Ben knows, Ben and I just spent 3 days looking at these definitions for the National Spelling Bee, and for much of the general vocabulary, it really holds up quite well. But there are moments like this one where rock and roll, where you really can think, well, that was the definition of someone writing maybe in 1956 at a moment when rock and roll was not really completely understood the way that we understand it today.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah. Speaking of Ben Zimmer, and Ben has joined us. I think probably because Ben has been on the show more than anybody else in the world, understandably so. And I think maybe he's getting a little bit worried that you've been on the show a little bit too much. So he's here. And Ben, if you want to say hi, if you're in your cubicle, that'd be great. Because I have a question. I kind of have a question for both of you. Last month we had Stefan Fatsis, who embedded himself at Merriam-Webster in Springfield, and sort of to learn what it was like to be a lexicographer. And he mentioned that you and Ben discovered a secret folder of obscene words.
Well, not really. And Ben, can you talk? Is Ben there?
I'm here. I can talk.
Then
If you'd
you
like me
answer
to.
this.
Okay. Well, there are untold wonders in the Merriam-Webster office there in Springfield, and I've been lucky, thanks to Peter and others like John Morris, to let me sort of rifle through their papers sometimes when I'm researching something. I did some research on the F word, how fuck was originally considered for Webster's third by Philip Gove, but was removed because of the publisher's objections. And I've been, looking for all sorts of, what I could find on that. And in the course of looking through things, Peter and I stumbled on, a file just where editors in the past were dealing with various obscene terms, and some of the correspondence that they received, sometimes very scholarly correspondence from professors who studied such things, and saying, well, why isn't this word in the dictionary? You claim to be a descriptive dictionary. Surely these words should be included. So yeah, I mean, that's just, some of the things that you can find, and there in Springfield, because nothing ever gets thrown away there, it seems. It's all
Right.
it's all there if you look hard enough. So it's a wonderful resource.
So is it a little bit? Is it overstating it to say this is a secret file?
It was secret in the sense that we had to look for it.
You knew I do it.
But no, there's no secret. There's no secret. I mean, that's the thing about Gove. Like, I don't think it ever occurred to him not to enter such terms, and many of other terms are entered because he was looking at words like objects of study. He basically said, this word is used. There's no question it belongs in the dictionary. And many people might know the story. The story of Webster's third is also sometimes called the story of ain't.
Yeah.
So which happen to be two respective titles of two books dedicated to this subject, one by Herbert Morton, one by David Skinner, who's our friend. But what happened was the publisher, the president of the company, decided he didn't want the story of the new edition to be centered around that one word, the F word. As it turned out, the story ended up being centered around a different word, and that word was ain't. But either way, and I think in some ways that argument was ill-informed and not always right on point. But to even to have a conversation in 1961 about whether the word ain't belongs in the dictionary is a way to kind of inform people how dictionaries are made and what they should do, what they maybe shouldn't do.
Right. I want to get. I do want to. I want to talk about controversies in a minute. And thank you, Ben. This counts as an appearance on that word chat. So.
Yeah, put it to my total.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and I haven't been paying attention because we've been talking so much because it's so much fun. But if you do have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll call on you to ask them in the room. But I think we have two to get us going.
We do, yes. Karen, I saw your question about the book in the chat, if you would like to unmute and ask. Or I am happy to ask on your behalf. There we go. Okay, perfect. Just checking. So the question was, there has been comment that physical books are a luxury product for the elite. Thoughts about this? And would you define elite as a cultural or economic elite in this case?
Well, I mean, this takes us, it's a philosophical question. It's a great question. But it takes us back to the invention of the printing press and the idea that that knowledge could be disseminated in ways that were no longer scribes and ink and art. And of course, literacy itself is the basis of this dissemination. So the fact is, we are making a mass market product. I think our paperback dictionary, which is the best-selling reference book of any kind in America, I think it's a $6 book. The reason I have a job is that what had been a luxury product, Webster's Dictionary in 1828, cost $20, which was an astounding amount of money. It was 3 or 4 months' wages for most people in 1828. And when the Merriams took over, they reduced that price to $6 in 1847. Still pricey, but much more affordable. And then they reduced the price to $3 to the Collegiate and the first Collegiate dictionary. And then the first paperback was 25 cents. So clearly the model for the Merriam model was always mass distribution for maximum profits through through volume. And that's still our mission, and we can't get any more accessible than free online. And I don't consider a book to be a luxury item at all. I think anyone who can go to school will hopefully get books. We were just at lunch today talking a lot about the Dictionary Project, if you've never heard of it. It's a very successful charitable organization that donates dictionaries to third graders around the country. It's been going on for decades, and I myself have been part of the group that gives these dictionaries. I've sometimes done it in Mexico as well as in the United States, often in underprivileged areas. And just to see the look on these kids' faces when a teacher in, urban Mexico City says, you can write your name on this book, because the kids have never owned a book. And then unfortunately, once one of them asks me to sign, then I have to sign all of them. And that becomes a different kind of event. But no, I mean, I take your point, but I think that we have to look at literacy and publishing of fact-based information as being essential and not luxurious. And I just hope that a dictionary like this, which is a little bit of a gift book for sure, but nevertheless, as you probably know, used bookstores won't even take your dictionaries back. They won't accept them. Charitable groups like Salvation Army will not accept your dictionaries because that's how little they're valued. They're highly valued in prisons, I might add, and I myself have often donated, excess books, runoffs, and returns to prisons. But I have to do that in my private capacity, not as an employee. But I know that through our correspondence, we know that many people have, many people in prison request dictionaries. It's the most requested book. So I do recommend, if wherever you are, you have old dictionaries or old school dictionaries, think of local prisons as places to give them. But anyway, so I mean, I understand your question, but I hope not. I hope that dictionaries aren't luxury items unless you're talking about a big antique like the ones behind me, or a collector's dictionary. But these are workhorse dictionaries. They're not show horse dictionaries. They're really for learning. That famous sequence in the film Malcolm X, where they show that he taught himself with his copy of the Collegiate Dictionary. In fact, they were licensed and had permission from Merriam-Webster in the film to show the Seventh Collegiate on camera. And there's so many stories like that of people who taught themselves with a dictionary. I'll leave you with one, which is here at Merriam-Webster, we sometimes host educational professional development for teachers, and sometimes those teachers are international. There was one group that included an English teacher from Ivory Coast, and he had a Merriam-Webster French English dictionary in his pocket, in his suit pocket. And the State Department minder, the sort of host, asked this man, "Did you bring your Merriam-Webster dictionary because that's our visit today?" He said, "No, I bring this everywhere. I learned English with this book." And the thing is, I wrote that dictionary in this building, and it was given by the USAID for free to Francophone West Africa. He learned English, became an English teacher, and brought it all the way home. And it moves me. That was a book that is not a luxury. So I really hope that that we look at these things as necessities.
Yeah. I was thinking that my first reaction was that it is sort of, there is that cultural thing we talked about, making it a Christmas gift. And
Yes.
but you're right. I mean, people in the early 19th century, despite the cost, they still bought the dictionaries because that was a symbol of I don't want to say status. It was more of a symbol of aspiration to something better, education. So
That's an important point. The name Collegiate itself, which is, by the way, trademarked. So there are no other dictionaries that can call themselves Collegiate. Notice the other Websters were college dictionaries. Merriam-Webster, we lost the rights to the name Webster in 1903 or something, but we were able to trademark the circle. So there, if you look at the circle, there is a trademark on the circle and the name Collegiate. And it is kind of funny that the circle is the most elemental symbol in human history. We have a trademark on a circle, so if you make a reference with a circle on it, you will get sued, or we have to defend the trademark. But we lost the rights to the name, which is, by the way, the reason we changed the name of the company to Merriam-Webster to distinguish us from other publishers, because the name Webster could be used by anyone, and often is or was. And I hope it's not a luxury. And I grew up loving reading dictionaries, and I bet all of you did too.
Yeah. All right, really quick, I asked this of Stefan Facets. Last month, what was your first dictionary? Do you remember?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I mean, my father had. It was his dictionary, and it was a Merriam. It was the fifth, I guess, from the early 50s, I guess. And we still have it at the house. So that would have been the fifth, I believe, the fifth Collegiate. You've got one?
I've got a fifth. That's my
there we go. And that had
my
the pretty
oldest
cover.
dictionary.
Notice the cover with the square and the ciphers, the NW ciphers in the corners. That's the great cover. We love that cover, and that's also essentially the design of Webster's second, the unabridged dictionary of the 1930s and through the 60s. And so that would be the one that was in the house. The one I remember buying was when I was a student in Paris, and I actually was so stupid. I moved to Paris as a student without a good bilingual dictionary, and I went to a used bookstore and I bought a Cassell's dictionary. So Cassell's, Cassell, which I was told is pronounced Cassell's and not Cassell's. And I still have that dictionary. I bought it in Paris, and I still love it.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. This is 1936. So it probably wasn't 50s. It was probably a little bit earlier than that.
Right. His might be the sixth. I'm sorry, the sixth. I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. We have another question from the room, and this one is spelling bee related from our good friend Kate Carp.
Yes, Kate. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. I got 4 laugh emoticons on this, but I was really serious. I was wondering if 6, 7 becomes one of your word entries. How would you ask for it in a spelling bee? Or would you?
Yeah, it's hard because I mean we identify words by their definitions, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
but also, I mean, of course, we do speak the words. I mean the spelling bee is the performance of the dictionary, so that you hear everything. It's only the spelling that's withheld, right? So the fact is,
mhm.
we can say the head word. The head word, if it's ever entered, I sort of doubt it right now, just because we
Yeah.
don't have an easily discernible definition, which is one of our criteria. But without a discernible definition, it's kind of hard. But no, we speak the word. So of course, and by the way, the speller is not required to know whether it's hyphenated or an open compound. All that is required is the letters in the correct order. So they don't have to mention if it's capital or if there are sometimes accented characters. They don't need to. And the spellers at the national level, they know that. They do not waste one tiny bit of energy on an acute accent or a trema or a
Right.
umlaut or they because they know what to concentrate on, which is just the order of the letters.
But these are numerals. So how would
No, no, I mean,
they?
no, but there are terms like 86 that are entered in the dictionary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and 86 is entered in the dictionary, of course, and
As
so
numerals, with numerals.
yeah, with new no, 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 it's entered, it's spelled out, it's spelled out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's entered both ways, but if you look up eight, you'll find 88, 86, 86. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
All right. All right. If anybody else has questions, please go ahead and we'll try to get to them. We got about 20 minutes left. 16, maybe I'm pushing it. When you so when you decide you said there are fewer words and there's more space, it's more breathable. There are a lot. I was interested at the usage notes because that's kind of that's the thing that, of course, I geek out about the usage, the etymology, those notes in there that you're getting more and more of when you go online. I'm surprised that they're into the print edition. So how do you decide when to use those?
Well, I mean, again, we know that, for example, affect and effect, or imply and infer, or further and farther, or or the use of literally, or the use of unique. These are things, and those are entries that are consulted constantly, and we have to deduce in many cases for their usage. And so, what we recognize that if these are highly consulted entries, let's give a fully formed dictionary entry, which includes that usage element. So not just a label, but in these cases, full usage notes with explanations, and and a term like irregardless, it does have a usage note, of course, and because a good dictionary should protect you, should warn you, should warn you from embarrassing yourself and from offending others, and that's what, to me, a good usage note should do.
Well, that brings up another point, the offending others thing. We're in kind of an interesting time in terms of language now, where we have sort of a backlash against DEIA terms. There's sort of this anti-woke movement. Was that a consideration? Did you, as you're working on this new print edition, which is a little different? I mean, you can't put something up there and get backlash and change it, but did that affect some of the decisions about what to, how to, not what to include, but maybe what to include, but also how to define things?
Well, first of all, most of this book was, already typeset before any of this backlash. So I mean but second of all, of course, we're a shared language is a shared set of facts. We only deal with facts. Now, the usage notes often express what I call the manners of language, the cultural facts that you might be judged harshly if you use irregardless in a professional piece of writing, and that many people do pay attention to imply and infer as being different words, or the skunked nature of some terms. But at the same time, no. I mean, there's information about pronouns, about African American, habitual be, and many others, and the term woke itself, for that matter. They're all, they're all defined as they should be because they're used in print. They're found in print, and that's what the dictionary does. That's what it's for. So the
Mhm.
easier way to understand this is we treat them like every other word.
Mhm. But there are exceptions where, I mean, there are cases in the past where there has been controversies, usually surprising, things that you would never expect. But there have been controversies, and that sort of muddle the whole process of defining. So it like in the 11th, what after the 11th came out, was
Well,
there?
marriage it was the big one, I think, in the 11th,
Yeah.
because gay marriage became legal the following year after its publication in Massachusetts only, and then a couple years later in the broader United States. So the evolution of that particular entry is fascinating because there are actually three different stages of that definition. So yeah, I mean, we respond to the reality of the way words are used. But the fact is, even opponents to gay marriage use the term gay marriage. It has to be defined.
Right.
And so, in other words, there's nothing political about defining it. We just have to define it correctly.
Right. Is there anything you're worried about?
No,
Obviously,
not
you don't want to
particularly.
like point it
No, I
out,
mean,
but
we got a lot of attention for vaccine at a certain point in recent
yeah.
memory, that we'll all recognize and remember. But that was because I'm not a scientist. Is it called RH vaccine? The kind of vaccines that were being produced were a new technology, were new, and so they actually were a different kind of vaccine. They worked in a different way, and so we added a sense to the entry at vaccine to accommodate. Thank you. The mRNA, right. Thank you. Yeah, right. The mRNA vaccines. And because they are mechanically different, we made a new definition, and we were accused of doing the bidding of politicians or something. But no, I mean, the thing we were defining had itself changed significantly enough that we wanted to be accurate in our definition. That's the way it works. But that was sometimes I call these stipulative definitions. In other words, our evidence of the word's use is also also includes the in this case the science behind the word's use. Think of a term like designated hitter. When the American League, when National Baseball Association, when the American League said we're going to have a designated hitter, and here's what that is. Pretty much ever since, whenever that was in the 1960s, I'm going to guess. Ever since, everybody's used designated hitter pretty much the way that they explained it was to be used. So that's what I call a stipulative definition. In other words, there's an organizing body that invents the idea and the term and the label, the name for that idea. Now, it's not our job to be the secretary for for the American League, but we can recognize, okay, that this word really is staying between the lines. It's being used exactly the way it was described. And the same could be said for example, terms of wine. I defined 36 wine terms for this new edition. I'm very
Oh.
proud of them. But the fact is, the word champagne or Burgundy is used is the way that the French say it should be used, and that's and we're not, again, we're reflecting the usage, but the usage reflects those stipulative bodies that are authoritative. And so there are a lot of terms like that where there becomes this sort of circle of information, and also that the circle can be between journalists and editors and the lexicographers. So, for example, terms that are hyphenated or capitalized, sometimes we wish that they could be closed or simplified more quickly, but they are found in print so frequently in their old styling because the editors are using the dictionary. And the dictionary editors are looking to the journalists to figure out whether to change the styling. So there's an inherent conservatism to some of what we do, isn't there? And a kind of echo chamber effect. But anyway, I hope that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I remembered a question that my wife said. My wife says hello.
Hello.
She's teaching tonight, but she was wondering about the illustrations and does the new edition retain, leave some out? What's the
Oh yeah.
approach?
Oh no, I mean no, we have a lot still. Let's find a good one. Here's this is at Dog, very nice one.
Oh
uh,
yeah, very
which
nice.
might be familiar from the 11th Collegiate. They're a huge and important part. A lot of them are people, there is a reason for the choice of some of these. I often say that, that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Think of things that are extremely hard to discriminate with words, breeds of dogs, styles of hats or shoes, historical costume, historical architectural elements, um, shapes of leaves, shapes of flowers. You could write 600 words to try to describe how a maple leaf differs from an oak leaf, but if you just put them next to each other as an image, you'll get it in half a second. So we try to use those images as in a helpful way to help distinguish entries that otherwise might be too easily confused.
Yeah. A question from the room, and Deanna said she had to drop. She had to leave, but we'll ask her question and let her know the answer. And we all know what the answer is, unfortunately. But she says if there's a new 12th edition, is there going to be a new edition of the Merriam-Webster usage guide?
Oh, the usage dictionary?
Usage dictionary, yes.
The full usage dictionary. I see it. I can see it on your shelf there.
Where is it? I can't see it.
Yeah, right there. Yep. It's one of my very favorite books of all time. But I would like to say yes, it's been a pet project of mine for years, as Ben well knows, to revise this. We're in a different and there's a lot of good reasons to revise it. For example, in that dictionary that you've got, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary of English Usage, there's virtually no talk of gender or identity. And that's a big question for usage today. Obviously, that's changed. So there's a lot of new material there. There's a lot of familiar material. Again, the same things like literally or imply or infer or bemused. There's a lot of things, or myriad. I mean, there's a lot of kind of evergreen usage subjects. And I think it could be done. The fact is, I've learned from, for example, our friend Jesse Scheidlauer, who teaches at Columbia, teaches a course in the making of dictionaries for MFA writing students. That in his time, 10 years or so, teaching that class to graduate students in a writing program, he has never encountered a student who has any idea what he's talking about when he mentions the objection to sentence adverbs. Or disjuncts. So, we will be taking off momentarily, or hopefully, hopefully I'll have hopefully you'll get your copy of the Collegiate Dictionary. So they don't even know what the problem is. And so what we've realized is there has been an evolution in English usage, and also the absorption and acceptance of I mean, I always thought the disjunct thing was sort of ridiculous. I mean, if you're in an airplane and say we'll be taking off momentarily, it's very clear that you mean in a moment and not for a moment, and the context determines everything, like many other words in English. But sticklers had always complained about those things. So it's possible that some of these are simply going away and are not coming back. But the simple matter of business means that we don't sell many copies of that dictionary, and it's been a hard sell to revise it. However, if you look up those entries like imply, infer, or hopefully, look them up online, you'll see there's a very robust and very up-to-date usage information in the online dictionary, and of course in the 12th Collegiate.
Mm-hmm. And that is, you were able to create the 12th without hiring a giant staff and spending years doing things, because you've been working on it.
Right, because in a sense, it's the accumulated new stuff of the last, bunch of years, including, going all the way back. to the 11th. So yes, there was a ton of work that was already done that needed to be typeset. In some cases, we had to abridge a little bit. Of course, what we would do is choose fewer example sentences and shorten some of the etymologies, which have grown very long, as I said, and shorten some of the usage information. We had to make it printable, print friendly, and you'll find therefore expanded entries online.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask, and we're kind of rushing toward the final hour, and I'm thinking, oh God, I want to ask Peter this, I want to ask Peter that. I mean, I'd love to hear about whether you actually tried all the wines as you were defining them. But the Merrill Perlman in the chat points out that we could use a new Dictionary of English Usage partly because American Heritage is no longer active, and we no longer have the usage panel regularly meeting, looking at how language is changing, which brings me to the question of we no longer have the American Heritage. We no longer have Webster's New World as an active dictionary. We no longer have Dictionary.com has let go of its a wonderful group of lexicographers. We have, I don't know what Oxford, I don't know what their publication schedule is for an American dictionary, but they're sort of a different animal. I mean, who's the competition? What do you when you see all these dictionaries that are no longer active dictionaries? I mean, I think I put the question to somebody in a recent show: do we need more than one dictionary? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I find it lamentable. I mean, it's a very sad state of affairs that we have such an impoverishment in American publishing. We had great traditions. And certainly in our lifetimes, Mark, the American Heritage was a great program. The Webster's New World was a great program. These were handmade, careful dictionaries with a point of view. And with Merriam-Webster, they had three very different ways to write definitions, different approaches. And I value all of that, but especially I value the fact that they were made by teams, made by hand. They were real dictionaries. So it's a very unhealthy industry and we're seeing similar things in journalism, similar things in publishing in a broader sense. So no, that's a very unhealthy state of affairs. Our competition is very clearly Google. And AI that poach our material more directly than they do, I think, any other profession. And that's an existential problem. It's clear to me that AI is terrific for research, but it cannot create knowledge. It cannot create new definitions. So we're still here, and I think that's maybe the biggest message for the 12th Collegiate is kind of an assertion that we're doing okay, that we're still here, that we're able to make this investment, and to show not just a legacy product and a heritage product, but also kind of a fun product that connects us to customers, but also people who use us online. We are always I personally use dictionaries in both forms every single day. And I think a lot of you do too. And that's why, it is counterintuitive. It is a surprise. It's been a shock to almost every kind of broadcast interview I've had in the last 5 or 10 years has been, do you still even print dictionaries? But of course we do. We sell a lot of them. And I think some people are too online, and they don't recognize that the world really does still use books. I only read books on paper myself.
All right, I'm gonna say we're out of time, and it's been a fantastic, terrific hour, as it always is. It's always a pleasure to talk. Are you going to join us in Atlanta for the ACES conference? Okay, good. And the next one?
March?
Atlanta, I think it's April. I should know. I don't remember.
Yep, looking forward to it. Great.
Yeah. No, it's definitely in April. Definitely in April. I'm going to be out of the country in March, so it's definitely in April. Okay. And so we'll see you there. Thanks very much. We may do a show next month. We're not sure yet. We haven't sort of figured out. It's Christmas time. Right. We'll have to decide. But thank you for being here, everybody. This has been terrific. Thank you, Peter. It's great to see you. Great to chat. And we'll see everybody next time. We'll definitely we'll definitely be back with Word of the Year in January.
Okay.
Ben, I'm sending you an email.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all.